Have you ever had one of those days where you just can't focus? Your motivation is totally shot, and you find yourself doing things you know you shouldn't? Well, today, we're going to dig into the neurological cost of a super common digital habit. And according to the source material for this explainer, it's having a way bigger impact on our brains than we probably realize. Let's get into it.
Right off the bat, the source we're looking at today does not pull any punches. It opens with this really direct, kind of provocative statement. It's designed to make you stop and challenge a pretty common belief right from the get-go.
So what's really going on here? Well, according to this perspective, that feeling of being unfocused, unmotivated, that's not just you being lazy. It's actually a sign that two fundamental parts of your brain are in a direct conflict. It's like a civil war for your attention, and one side has a massive, massive advantage.
All right, so to really understand this war, we first have to meet the two opposing armies. Let's break down the two key systems that are constantly battling it out inside our heads.
And here they are. You've got the thinking brain versus the pleasure brain. So on one side, you have the part of you that plans for the future, the part that delays gratification and makes smart, strategic moves. But on the other side, you've got this ancient, powerful part that just wants pleasure, right now with absolutely zero effort. And the argument here is that high-speed, infinite novelty digital content is basically rocket fuel for that pleasure brain.
So what do you think happens when one side is constantly getting all the food and all the reinforcement? Well, it starts to run the show on autopilot. Your brain becomes conditioned to react in this predictable, almost robotic way.
And this habit loop is, it is powerfully simple. And I bet it sounds familiar. It all starts with a trigger, maybe a little boredom, maybe some stress. Out comes the phone. The brain, which has been trained, demands its dopamine hit. And here's the most important part. Step 4. You're not really choosing to do it anymore. You're just reacting to a trained impulse.
And this brings us to a really critical distinction. The source makes it clear that this cycle, this isn't an expression of your freedom or your personal choice. It's the literal definition of classical conditioning. An external cue leads to an automatic, learned response, and your conscious self, well, you're just along for the ride.
Okay, so this conditioning loop is what leads directly to that feeling of brain fog, right? The procrastination, that sense of just feeling dumber. But there's a specific neurological reason for this sensation, and it actually has a name.
The term is hypofrontality. It's a fancy word, but it describes something pretty simple. It's when your prefrontal cortex, your thinking brain, literally goes offline for a bit. This is why you might find yourself procrastinating on that big project or breaking promises you made to yourself. It's not that your willpower failed, it's a physiological state. The decision-making part of your brain just isn't available for a while.
Now, let's throw stress into the mix because, well, that's life, right? When you have a bad day or you're feeling anxious, your brain's #1 goal is just to escape that bad feeling. So instead of firing up the problem-solving parts of the brain, it just defaults to that conditioned escape route. The habit becomes, and the source calls it this, an emotional pacifier. And over time, that just makes it harder to deal with real-life challenges.
To make this whole brain process way easier to get your head around, the source gives us this simple but really powerful analogy. It kind of illustrates the whole dynamic perfectly.
Okay, just picture your brain as a car. Simple enough. Now let's look at who or what is actually driving this thing.
So in this car, our emotions, that's the engine. They provide all the raw power, the drive. Our logic, that prefrontal cortex we were just talking about, is both the driver at the wheel and the brakes that provide control.
So what does one of these compulsive digital habits do in this car? It slams the gas pedal to the floor. It sends this huge, overwhelming surge of power to the emotional engine, pushing it way past its limits, way beyond what it's meant to handle.
And here's the climax of the whole thing. With the engine just redlining, the logical driver gets completely overwhelmed and basically passes out. That's your hypofrontality. And the brakes, your impulse control, they get used so much they just melt away. So now you've got a car moving at incredible speed, but there's nobody at the wheel, and it's headed straight for a crash.
So if the driver's passed out and the brakes are shot, how in the world do you stop the car? Let's look at the solution that's offered for taking back control of the wheel.
So the fix, according to this, is all about getting that driver, your logical brain, back online. It starts with the hard part. Stop the overstimulation. And you have to expect withdrawal. It's gonna be uncomfortable. Then it's about rebuilding. Move your body, train your focus like a muscle, and connect with actual, real-life human beings. All of these things help wake up the driver and start repairing the brakes.
And look, the whole point of this explainer, it isn't about morality. The argument here is not about being a good or bad person.
The real danger, it suggests, is that this neurological state makes you impulsive, distracted, and ultimately way easier to control, both by your own habits and by the platforms that are designed to keep you scrolling.
And that leaves us with one last, pretty important question to think about. When you find yourself caught in that loop, that automatic reaction, it's worth asking yourself, are you the one making the choice? Or is a conditioned part of your brain just running the show? Who's really in control?